1, the meeting of the Auburn Economic Development Committee will come to order Thursday, February 12th at 6 p.m. Okay, first on the agenda is discussion on developing objective criteria for tax factor at tax classification.
Should I take that, Madam Chair?
Please.
Okay. I know I sent some information in everyone's packets that I'd compiled prior to me writing my memo, and then subsequently I got some other info. So I just want to make sure before we start talking about it that everyone has what we're going to be talking about. So one thing I think I said earlier today, or was it yesterday? Blends together. It is a compendium. It has Auburn's tax rate, which we've seen before. We have Shrewsbury, we have Webster, and a couple articles from Webster. Did folks get that? And did they see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone want a copy to refer to now?
Please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm not going to lead off with this, but this is part of the mix. Lo and behold, I have 5 copies.
You have it memorized.
No, I think I have a personal copy here as well, of course. I used to. I don't know where it's there. Might need it back. Oh, here it is. Okay. And then, so let me refer to my memo. Yeah, so I was able to, I think prior to the last meeting, I was trying to get in touch with the Worcester Chamber people. I was able to meet with them finally after our last meeting. They provided us, it was a good conversation, and, you know, given, as we know, I'm a Worcester resident, so it was a lot of Worcester gossip. But we were talking about, again, they have, it's sort of a slightly different thing, but every year the Chamber of Commerce lobbies the City Council in Worcester to adjust their rates they're trying to, the Chamber is obviously trying to provide relief to the businesses. So I was talking to them, they don't really have specific metrics. I know we were talking about, and at the suggestion of the select board, coming up with, specific data points, different demographics or job-related data, whatnot. They don't really have that. They don't really provide that as far as their lobbying, but they do, the way they try to frame it, I think you got this in your email packets previously, they sort of they'll pull things out and compare Worcester to surrounding communities. Mm-hmm. So there's been a lot of discussion, for instance, in Worcester in recent years about getting a new supermarket. Everyone was excited when the market basket came on number 20 in Shrewsbury, and folks are like, well, hey, Worcester wants one too, or Trader Joe's, or pick whatever you want that might be in Shrewsbury or points east. So what they do, and you can refer to your, I have copies here if anyone wants a live copy.
Sure.
Anyone want one?
Printed them, I think.
Yeah, they're
That'd be rude.
Well, thank you for saying that. Thank you. So for this packet that I just handed out, the one you're receiving now, they compare Worcester to other, I guess those are all officially cities. I'm not sure if they're all cities or not, but there's certainly communities, but no, these are just the highest tax rates in Massachusetts. They're largely cities, but anyway. Then they, I'm not going to go through everything in this, but then they have a rate comparison with some central Mass communities. We can certainly see that residentially, is that a word? Residentially, Auburn seems to be comparable to the communities listed: Auburn, Millbury, Northwest, Shrewsbury, Western Worcester. But the big difference you see, of course, relative to Worcester's case anyway, is they're essentially double, in many cases, the commercial rate from some of the neighboring communities. So I don't think it's that much of a stretch to wonder why some company might choose to locate in Shrewsbury or Westboro, have access to the same, market, so to speak, if it pay half the rate of taxes. So that's just something illustrative. Another big issue, if you're going on to the next page, another big issue in Worcester, and I think we've talked about a little bit here, is hotels. The perception, at least from the business community in Worcester, is that there needs to be more hotels to support events like at the DCU Center and at the colleges. And recently, last year or the year before, there was some news that WPI was buying a couple of properties adjacent to their campus, which are currently hotels, with intent of ultimately making them dorms, which would take more hotels off of Worcester's portfolio, if you will. So that's still, that may or may not happen. It looks like it might, but so obviously the Chamber's very interested in that. And so, again, they were using the hotel as an example. They had several Worcester hotel properties, the AC Marriott downtown, Beechwood, etc. and sort of just said, here are the taxes in Worcester, here are the taxes, based on an average of other communities. And again, looking at these things, some of these hotels would stand to save hundreds of thousands of dollars annually just by being a couple miles in a different direction. So,
Can you assume that the assessments are gonna stay the same as you move
Well,
to
that's-
communities? I mean, isn't that part of the formula and part of the game?
well, I'm not a professional on that, and I don't want to speak to any financial municipal people who might be on the table. But that's always one of the issues. You made the tax rate. When I was in Boylston recently, the tax rate was lowered. But lo and behold, the assessment went up.
Yeah.
Right.
And on one hand, if you're selling your house, that's great. But if you're not, then you're
Right.
probably not as happy about it. I'm not suggesting there's anything nefarious going on, but I think it's always a pull and tug of valuating property at a certain point to get to a certain number.
Yeah, but like when you're comparing a property in Worcester to a similar sized property, say in Shrewsbury, I mean, I can't imagine they evaluate it at the same level assessment wise.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know.
In theory, yes, but then there's certain, like you have certain neighborhoods that would get assessed higher.
Right.
So depending on where you live, yes. But the valuation method is the same
Yeah.
for all communities. And you could think of it like, if your value goes down, the tax rate goes up. So, and no matter what, the town is going to get 2.5% more,
Right.
no matter which way it swings.
That is interesting. And again, I suppose I'm not going to volunteer our other staff, but I mean, at some point, if we want a tutorial from our municipal staff, maybe we can get the assessors to come and talk to us at some point about that kind of thing. But just to round out the packet that is distributed, it rounds out with a couple of Excel sheets that again they use. I think they use the market baskets in Oxford and Shrewsbury and the Wegmans in Northborough as sort of the comps. And in this case, we have one of them it's relative to Auburn. So looking, that's just interesting to see, but not so much the specifics of the market itself, but this notion of if we were to identify a certain kind of business we want, a market, a hotel, a recreation facility, whatever it might be, that might be one way we can, the collective, we can make our case to a prospective developer is, looking at our neighboring communities or the competitive communities, depending what it might be, and use something like that. So that I know that's not the select board is looking for kind of quote unquote objective data points, but I think sometimes it's hard to be objective when you're trying to visualize it. And when you're just looking at aggregate numbers, I think it'd be hard. But if you think of it in terms of, a market basket is going to cost this much less in this town versus that town, I think that's a lot. That's honestly easier, but I think that's more intuitive for people to get their minds around. Versus, that's a tax factor closing at 1.03. Like what is I don't know. So
what about looking at the properties in our own town? So like what's a Shaw's or a Stop and Shop? Shop and Save, I mean, what are the
Park
comps
and
in
Shop.
our own community? Sorry, thank you.
Park and Shop.
In our own community, if you're going to start looking at that, so there was a market basket. I don't know, what is that? All types of businesses you're going to have to attract. It's not about just adjusting to get to the same tax roll that you have with different rates, I would think. It's about also making it attractive to bring
Well, I think
businesses in.
I would agree with that because I think the idea is we make it more attractive. However, we do that, and then we're growing the pie, right? We're growing the base, and so even if the valuations slow down or go up or whatever, we're still getting it bigger.
Right.
No, I think that's a good point. And yeah, this was just again in a somewhat limited capacity right now, but this is certainly a tool that we can adapt as we need to. I thought it was just a pretty helpful way to look at it, as opposed to I don't want to see 20-year mortgage amortizations. This is
Right.
this is a bit easier to see. So I share that with you because I said we're gonna gather some information. Also from the select board, I know I sent it to you in the original email, but someone had asked about could we get a copy of the presentation that the chamber made back in November, and I have hard copies. I guess in the spirit of accepting my paper, I'll pass them up.
It's color ink too.
Yeah, I have to get you guys some binders so you can put it all in there. again, I'm not going to walk through this because it's, you know, kind of past the date now, but this is just something, again, maybe it's maybe next fall, let's say, when it's getting closer to that time, maybe this committee would want to look in more depth at this, or look at some other ways we can articulate this, depending where we want to go with that. So wanted to share that. The other piece on this matter that we talked about last time that I said I would follow up on was there's a handful of communities, or not a handful, but several communities that were talked about as having closed their rates, their Google rates to singular. And so I was, at one point I'd been told Clinton, but when I did research, actually it's not the case at all. They're diverged. So maybe they're working in that direction. Maybe that was my misunderstanding. But anyway, so just for fun, and I already gave you this packet with has the Auburn rates on the front. The Shrewsbury has had the same rate. It changes yearly, but they've had it the same rate for at least 25 years now. I think probably even longer than that. I did get a brief email back from them, and they said it's a political decision that they want to keep it that way.
Sure.
So that's understandable. So that, yeah, I just thought, again, I'm providing this for your reference. Again, Shrewsbury certainly seen its share of growth and development. So, and I think relative to us, it's like 3 times larger. I want to say they're like 40,000 now, something like that.
Yeah.
And it's certainly with a big commercial base as well. So they could probably afford to go a little bit lower. But anyway, I thought that was helpful to see. Webster, the town of Webster, is another example of a community, and these are slightly more detailed charts. I can tell you that the Webster assessor was very excited to get my phone call and email, and I'll be playing a little bit of phone tag, but he was very excited to talk about this and provide me the information, and I know he'd be willing to talk further. But you can see again they were a little different, but they've been closing their gap for about the last decade. It looks like since, if I'm reading this correctly, since 2019, they've had the same residential, am I reading that right? Yeah.
Yep.
About there. So same residential and same commercial rate. So that's interesting. And I think perhaps Webster, at least population-wise and whatnot, is about our size, maybe a little smaller than Auburn. If I'm looking at their levy, it says their budget was 34 million. I think, what are we, 80 million, Patrick? Something like that.
We're pressing on 90.
Okay, so
Well,
yeah.
we're at 80. We're at 84. I'm thinking of 2024, but we're already doing 27. But we're headed to 87, 90 million.
All right, so in this
Yeah.
case, Webster might be more like a
I just did the annual report thing. So back then, 2 years ago, it was 84.
Okay.
So I have multiple years in my head.
But it's in that ballpark. It's clearly bigger.
Yeah, we're up close to 90.
Clearly bigger than Webster, but this is interesting to see. And again, eager to talk about. He provided me with a couple of news articles talking about this. So I don't have much to react to it about, other than to say, it is interesting to see how different communities handle it. And again, I know at least in the case of Webster, if we wanted to get some more information and more anecdotal information from, I'm sure he'd be happy to talk to me further.
Thank you so much for all of the information. It was really insightful to look at the information and,
I think, I didn't mean when you're done, Mary, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, Exhibit 1, I was the market basket comparing, from Auburn, Oxford, Shrewsbury, Northborough. And if I were the CFO for Market Basket, I would not be moving here to Auburn. Like, I would be paying $60,000 to potentially $75,000 more in taxes.
Mm-hmm.
So, as a resident, I don't want my taxes to go up, but again, as a resident here, I understand the importance of commercial growth here in Auburn.
There's other factors too. I mean, if you look at, I shop at Market Basket periodically down in North, is it North Oxford or Oxford? North Oxford, right? Is Oxford?
I think it's technically not
Just-
Oxford. It's Oxford. It's Oxford.
Yeah.
And one of the things you have to take into account is the size of our town. So if you put something like that Market Basket in Auburn, the amount of traffic that goes down that highway, gets off at Sutton Avenue and goes into that parking lot. And, so, when you put an infrastructure like that in the middle of a community, which is, in their case, it's right off a highway and it's right into a parking lot. But, if you can envision something like that here with that amount of traffic, you're now also not only just talking about the impact of the tax rate, but you're talking about the impact on our roads and on a lot of other things.
But that could be said with all the developments that are going in town as well, right? So they're developing all these apartments and, so I would think then you would need more grocery stores.
I can respond to that, but it's not really relevant to the moment. So I think they're going to go where they can save some money. So if you're going to be able to go to Market Basket because it costs you $2 less than to get something at Park and Shop, you're not going to shop in Auburn because they put it there. You're going to go where you can get some kind of reasonable value for your money, and that's one of the factors from a economic standpoint. Is it affordable? So one of the things that we're talking about is one side of the coin, and I think that's what makes this. After our last meeting, and I left here, I thought about it for a little while, or the task at hand, and I thought, there's so many variables on either side of this that have an impact, and I thought for a little while, why did the question even come our way, right? Because we're looking for, the select board is reaching out to say, hey, can you help us with something? Can you give us some feedback? And I, for one, think that, we had probably, like I said before, I don't even think we've had 1,000 more homes or tax bills. We know that we've got a lot of property that's untapped. So that means, and our valuations have gone up. So that means that right now where the tax rate sits, and whether we split it or not, Auburn, whether you're a commercial business or not, we are all supporting all of that growth because, we haven't really been able to bring and so our goal is to hopefully bring in commercial business or to build our economic development in a way that this sort of takes care of itself. That was sort of what I sort of envisioned is, we've got to sort of assess when you have problems, you got to sort of look at what are the contributing factors. And right now, it doesn't help that we've got untapped or unused commercial property. And, we're trying to also build our residential base and do it to accommodate the needs of the residents that already exist here. It's not an easy formula.
But one reason we could have vacant property is because the tax rate is too high.
Or because the landlords are holding on to it and not releasing it because they feel they can get better than market value for it. Just a suggestion, I don't know why Yankee Drummer has sat there, but I know a couple of times it has probably gone forward and someone's attempted to buy it. And the only thing I could think of was you've got a buyer and a seller and something went wrong. So it might not be because of economic development. There are variables completely beyond our control. We could bang our heads on the wall and hope. So I see part of the role is not letting those kinds of decisions being an obstacle, but it's a task at hand to say, how can we shake this up so we can get all of this stuff moving? Yeah.
So I know like years ago, they would send surveys to new business owners here in Auburn to get their feedback. I remember early on when I was, in this committee. So I wonder, is that still happening? What's the feedback from businesses entering Auburn? I guess maybe the chamber, they may have more information.
Yeah, no, I'm not aware of any, certainly any, not in my obvious folders that I have access to, any historical, survey data or anything like that. I'll certainly look into it. I mean, there's certainly been people in town hall who've been around there that I can find out. But I think perhaps the chamber might have their finger on that pulse a little more. But either way, my wheels are already turning, which is
Okay.
good and bad for me. But I think that's something to the point we're talking about. There are many factors, like Patrick was saying, as far as why someone might want to locate here. I know that the select board tasked us with talking about the tax rate and data. But
And that's part of it.
That's part of it.
Sure, it's very much part of
But
it.
the more qualitative thing about, we've had a handful of businesses that even since I've been here, open up. Why are you here? Why are we here? But what attracted you here? What are the the pluses, minuses, all that kind of thing.
I think our location just is ideal, just to mention what I mean. When you travel throughout the state and you come across everybody I know, they're like, oh my God, I drive through Auburn all the time.
Right.
Like, because we're just at that 290, 90, that whole, you can go to Maine, Vermont, Rhode Island, 146, New Hampshire. We should be at full capacity right now with places, and so we have to figure out what's the code to break that. But, that's very desirable. So.
For sure. So that might be something I think I meet with the chamber folks. I want to say next week, so I can ask them about what if they do anything as far as when they do their intake I think they're probably dealing with their membership,
Right.
which is
Yeah.
not necessarily every business, but it's still a starting point.
I also remember like the PEG Access, they did a video for the Economic Development Committee, and this was when I first started, so it must have been a long time ago. And it was a video of Auburn, and they talked about like what attracts businesses to Auburn, and I guess this was something that they would push out, to potential business, coming here to Auburn. So I wonder if that video is still around.
Another thing I can look into, if I may, just generally, and I don't want to get us off topic, but one of the things I had contemplated coming in, before I really started here, back in the fall, was to use our website a bit more. And video is definitely more of a thing.
Sure.
That can be shared on social, can be shared on the website. But given everything going on right now, we have to wait till we get some beef up our staff again before we can do that. But that's something I'm looking at. So we could do, topical things, or we talk to that new business that just had the ribbon cutting, and they can talk, we're excited to be here. Auburn's great, come here too, that kind of thing. So that's something I will be looking at. But I think once we need to, like I said, we need to backfill the planner and
Right.
development positions, and then we can go from there. But in the meantime, I will look to see what.
So those were done, I believe, before Brooke,
Okay.
right? Brooke was her name before
Yeah.
she started.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, and certainly, I mean, I'll work with Darlene in that office to figure out what's going on.
Okay.
Because I know we have records that go, electronically going back to the early 2000s. So hopefully there's something in there.
Okay.
Excellent.
I was gonna suggest too, though, that because I think our task is right to say what we think the select board should consider, right, when they're thinking
Right.
about this. And I think that it's also the strategy of what types of businesses are we trying to attract and add to our town, because I've seen, right, a lot of these big banks move, they don't care about taxes, right? They'll pay whatever rate if it's an optimal location. And a big Planet Fitness moved in. Well, what does that do to the 3 local owned gyms in town, right? So that can't charge the low rates, right? So I think there's when they're thinking about, I know we're supposed to be the business economic development committee, but realistically what you're saying about infrastructure in town, and if some of these bigger if you look at that parking lot, which has been lovingly referred to as the Kelly Square of parking lots. You
I
can't
haven't
even
heard
get
that. That's
shots.
great.
You can't even get shots anymore because the
Yeah.
parking lot is so full
Wow.
from the Planet Fitness business. And so now, it's, I think there's just all these, like you're saying,
Other factors.
there's so many factors to how attractive do we want to be, and how low do we want to go, and how much do we want to shift the burden to the folks in town, because the reality is that said, you see in Webster, the annual rate has actually come down since they switched, right? For both single and, for residential inquiry, right? And I understand that ties to the valuations, and I get that it's a formula, but it's just kind of interesting. I don't know, it's again, trying to recommend variables that they should consider, and I don't know what the cause of that is.
If you look at it, it's telling me that they have new growth,
Yeah.
right? Their new growth has increased,
Right.
so I would say they're either developing or there's new business in
Right.
Webster.
Yeah.
My suggestion too is that another thing that comes to mind is that if they were to equal the two tax rates, let's just say we wanted to make it one, that they made it as a 10 or a 15-year goal, which would appeal to the business community, because over time they know it'd either be what it is or it'd come down slightly, and then the residential side would have plenty of time to be able to say, okay, I know it's going to go up, but we're not just going to level it this year and we're going to get hit. You know, if it's a plan and they're going to work towards a single rate, I think it would be beneficial for them, because I know one of the things that they had talked about and in the meeting was they said that a prior selectman had wanted them to do this, and then the people that voted it in didn't stay to try to have some kind of or maybe they didn't get elected back in. You know, who knows what the right? So the thought process is not necessarily to just completely say, well, we don't know that we shouldn't have a single rate, but we need a plan to get there, and to have it come in a way that it has to be acted on over a period of time. And I don't know if that would then become a select board decision, or if it would have to go before town meeting.
And I think you can make the argument they're already been doing that.
Right.
I mean, if you look at these numbers, and I mean, they're less than $2 apart. It's not like the gap that Worcester has, or even some of the other communities.
Right.
Do, you know, and it looks like they've been bringing them closer and closer. So
Right.
whether they've intentionally been following the recommendation or not, it seems like the data would say they're
The data
doing
sort
it.
of suggests that they are doing
They
it.
haven't
Right.
in the last few years. They haven't shifted.
Right.
Yeah, it made some pretty big leaps in the early.
The other
The
challenge
early
too that we have some people that have tried to come here as a business, but for one reason or another, we are up against other obstacles of other boards. So we have a couple of people that maybe haven't been able to come to Auburn because the planning board has denied them application. So, you know, we might want to attract a certain venue or whatever, and then we've got other areas of town saying, no, we're not going to let them in. So I think, Paul, we as a board need to meet with some of these other boards and understand what, if they're acting on the master plan, what's driving, not just, you know, the goals of the selectmen or us as an economic committee, but we have a master plan. And I think we need to meet with other areas of the town to get a grip so we're all on the same page.
Could you forward us the master plan?
Absolutely. I can tell you, it was the last master plan was done. I want to say it was 2017,
And even that's coming up on 10 years.
and that's I mean that's
along with our charge.
yeah. And it was
And in the middle of that, we had a pandemic.
Well, let's say that's-
You know.
So, circumstances have evolved
Yeah.
since then, but no, but you know, I had I'll certainly forward that to the committee. And it does have, I mean, it's a comprehensive plan, so it talks about environmental things, housing things, but there is an economic development chapter
Component to it.
Yeah.
And of course, you've got the vacancy on the town planner that you're.
Yeah, well, I'll touch on that. Yeah, that'll be helpful too once we get one of them. So I guess again, I'm for my own edification, I'm going to reach back out to the Webster assessor. I mean, we can read the numbers, and I think, as was rightfully pointed out, there's clearly been a lot of new growth there.
And if you look at their debt exclusion, so they've offset a lot of things in the debt exclusion. You know, you went from like less than 500,000, they're at $5 million. So I think that's too some of the offset, and that's why you see the tax rate.
Sure, that's what I mean. So maybe it is just a numbers game, so
Yeah.
to speak. But that's what I mean. Be happy to get some insight.
Yeah.
But pending that, I'm just because to put it back to the committee, like I just gave you a bunch of data. You probably want to digest it a little bit. But is there other information that we might be useful on this particular topic? I know we've talked about some bigger topics as well.
I guess, I mean, I'm just saying the chamber put together this slide deck, and I guess it's an interesting variable, but that, you know, what the businesses have given back to Auburn. And I don't know how reliable an indicator that is. I guess it's
Self-reported.
yeah, it's but you know, I think that they've tried to say that they'll, it frees up cash for them to support local orgs. At the same time, taxes support the whole community and the infrastructure to support the businesses. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I'm always playing devil's advocate on this stuff. But when only 15 of 200 plus businesses have contributed to orgs in town.
Yeah, no, it's
Clearly not a total sample.
It can't be. So
No.
yeah, so I don't know. It was just an interesting slide deck, but if it's going to be considered as a part of the variables, it may be interesting to get a little more depth or a little more information about how they gathered the information. If this is going to be a part of the consideration, it may just be advisable to the chamber to dig in a little bit more or supply a little more information, just because it is. I get what they're saying, and obviously it's wonderful that organizations in town, want to support and chip in on the fundraising of
Right.
the local schools and things. I know that that's how the schools this year hit their exceeded their target. Was a few local orgs, pitched in and helped them get what they needed to help kids go on field trips and stuff, which is fantastic. But also, this is not like necessarily a really clean data point to use, so it's like I'm having a hard time fitting it into the puzzle.
That's fair. Yeah.
Well, I learned from the last meeting too, or Mary, I learned from the last meeting too that I thought that there should be some other considerations, like for the group of people that are seniors that have been here, that the town should offer some kind of a deferred tax. Not that that would be it, but a model, or therefore something to offset. But one of the things that I learned is some of the things we can create some things, but other things in the tax determination are state-driven. So for instance, the categories are state-driven. We can't add different categories as a municipality. We have to follow the state mandate or law or whatever, regulations. So we can't create a small business and because I think part of what drives this is Auburn has a lot of small businesses, and they're being impacted by that commercial rate, just like the other commercial places are. And so I said, well, why couldn't we do a small business tax and give someone with a certain level of income or go off their balance sheet? I have to think of the right word, but why couldn't we give them a different formula, and the state wouldn't allow it? So
Yeah,
There are grants that are available to small businesses now from the town. I mean, when Ed was here and we were moving into town, he was talking about some of them that were available for businesses up to, say, $1 million a year.
thank you. Yeah, that's
There was some of that. There's also, first year in town, you're not going to be assessed for your property, your property tax, of stuff in your office, they come around the next year kind of thing. So
Are those incentives still in place?
as far as I know, they are, yes. I mean, that was last year that I had that conversation, so I would
okay.
assume so.
I'll get them. I
I think
wasn't.
they were also lobbying for a larger one, like up to $3 million or something. So we'd have to explore further. And then also just to piggyback on what you were saying as well about the seniors. So the presentation the assessor made to the select board in November that we got on video before the last meeting, they went through a slide that was specifically talking about various abatements. They currently exist in numbers that are there, including seniors and veterans and others as well that are already in place, and there are other opportunities to be part of the conversation.
But in order to do that, you have to be at a certain level
Sure.
of income. So it doesn't. I guess I'm just saying that I'm trying to defend the people that that say to me, my Social Security went up $150 last year for the year, or $1,000, but my taxes went up $500.
Sure.
So I've already lost half my Social Security. Never mind the health insurance. I mean, this is what I'm told, so it's like, and then, and they've gone to 2.5, 4 years in a row. So I'm getting beat up here. I can't get ahead of it. And I think what's so difficult, the other thing that people are noticing is that the cost of living has become so expensive in Boston that people are now moving out here from the greater Boston, Burlington, Lexington, Winchester, and all of that. And they're purchasing homes out in this area specifically for that reason. So yes, at the moment our valuations are up in their taxes, but some some people are also paying just as much as they were in the areas of Burlington and Randolph. Their taxes haven't gone down.
Right.
So there's just, it's part of what propels me is just the feedback. Sometimes when I'm talking, I get clipped in the supermarket or whatever, a neighbor will chat with me and I'm like, oh, I just want to cut my lawn, leave me alone.
Yeah, you're correct. Like the abatements and the exemptions, they're well defined. Like you have to be a certain age,
Yeah.
elderly or a veteran. You have to have certain incomes. But like there are different programs. Like there's, a senior work-off abatement program.
Right.
I don't know. Does Auburn have that?
That's a,
You
I think so, but that's as we're talking. I know it's public information, but
Right.
I'm gonna
No, we
gather that.
don't have they had it at
And
one
there
time, but they don't have
doesn't
it.
have to be an income restriction on that. And so what happens is you can have your residents come in and they can volunteer and they can get up to $1,500 tax abatement.
Right,
off
but Auburn
of-
doesn't offer that.
So yeah, that's something like, maybe we could
I think
suggest.
we did. We did, because we were talking about volunteerism at the library on the board there and restarting that for specifically that.
That, right,
Tethered
yeah.
to that
Council on
program.
Aging
So,
and
yeah.
the assessor,
Right.
they would oversee that program.
Yeah, I brought it up multiple years over time with Julie and with Ed, and it never got off the ground.
Yeah.
So just so that you're aware, I'm aware because I'm one of those
Right.
people who tried to push it, several years
And then I
back.
do know the legislation, there's like this circuit breaker abatement that they're pushing forward. So I think that's another one that, will, be utilized. But again, the circuit breaker, it's income based off the income, low income.
And at the same time, like you pointed out, 25 years ago, our houses weren't valued and the salaries, everything is proportioned, and you can't help it. We're living in real estate is on demand. It's expensive to live here and it's expensive people, it costs a lot of money to run the infrastructure that we have in Auburn. It's a good infrastructure and we've got to protect it.
But we also have like the strongest quality of living in most of the country because of the taxes, right? So I think
Yeah.
there's always trade-offs, but yeah, I do think that it's interesting as a variable for referring to the select board though is this concept of there are other creative solutions that we could be doing a better job of advertising to welcome and support smaller businesses coming to town because right, the reality is it doesn't seem like the big box guys are having any trouble coming here. I understand a small margin
That was well
business,
said.
a small
Yes,
margin
very good.
business, like
Yeah.
a market. Groceries are small margin. They're a different beast, and the competitive market there. I have been down a rabbit hole watching documentaries about grocery stores and how chaotic it is, and how much fake price fixation is happening in that industry because of monopolies. But aside from that, I think that there is a really strong argument to be made for the town really trying to push and advertise that it's not purely about the tax rate, which has been drifting slowly closer and closer together and doesn't seem to be preventing some of the big boxes. But more and more, I think people are talking about why don't we have small local businesses? We've just lost a lot of small local businesses. How many small local restaurants have closed in the last few years? Folks are retiring, no one wants the business, and now the lots are sitting vacant or are being snatched up by, banks and large chains. And so how do we shift the conversation not just purely focus on the tax rate, which probably drifting a little closer and closer together, but to your point, it's not that far apart anymore, not where we were, 10 years ago. And so I don't know, I think it's, again, they need to look at all variables. It's not purely just the tax rate.
Right. To Mary's point, if you just looked at the numbers,
Yeah.
there's any number of communities that are nearby that would probably have a better number.
Mm-hmm.
But what are the other things that Auburn can be doing? I think that's
Well, just for instance, to Lindsay's point, I know every year annually, don't they renew a lot of their permits? And I know I see the dollars come through on the finance committee, and I don't know how many of them are recurring and how many of them are one time.
Mhm.
You know, but they pay a lot of money on an annual basis to run the restaurants. They're not just paying taxes. They're paying, you know, they've got to pay for a lot of other fees and permits. You know, we have to support you know, it costs money to make sure our restaurants are on the up and up. We have to, you know, that's why we have health inspectors and everything else. So it's a double-edged sword.
Well, I'm going to begin compiling a list of current incentives that we have, whether they're publicized or not. And then also, there are other opt-ins at the state level that we're, you know, that maybe there are other ones Auburn could opt into to take advantage of. I don't know the answer to that. And again, maybe look especially in terms of the business side, because some of the other things we're talking about would help some of our residents, but they're not necessarily business per se. But what other, you know, we talk about these some, you know, grants that, you know, we might have had or may have still, who knows, but some sort of grants that are out there. What can we do? Do we need to set up funds to promote that? I don't know the answer to that yet, but I think to Lindsay's point, I think there seems to be somewhat an agreement. Like, it can't be just about the tax rate. There's got to be other things too, and that could be part of the recommendation that this group makes.
Sure.
I guess to be continued, Madam Chair. Yes.
Yeah, so we can move on to the next agenda item. Follow up on report to select board regarding proposed EDIC.
Yeah, I'll to the chair. I'll right, because I think.
Yeah, so I had the exercise of preparing a draft for which I mailed out. I don't know if everybody had a chance to see it.
Thank you.
Of course, I wait till the day of the meeting to finish it. I wrote it in my head.
I did read it when I just happened to see it come up and I read it.
So, you know, it's a draft and obviously open for feedback and ultimately turn it over to the chair for.
I've read it and I think it's really well done, executed, and I was going to make a motion to move it forward. If people, I've read it, that's why. So I just thought it was really well scripted, and I don't see any changes needed. But we can have discussion after the motion if you.
Anyone want a second?
I'm happy to second. It was very well written. I have no modifications.
Any discussion?
I read it before as well, and I thought it was pretty good. One thing I just wanted to do, or I guess put in here, which you did, was just kind of commend Mr. Richards for having an idea.
Yeah, for sure.
Kind of just to continue to encourage that type of thoughtfulness from residents, which you did. So that was just one thing that I was personally wanted to see.
The other thing I was going to suggest, since you brought it up, is I thought I'm one of those people that likes to say "I told you so." Sometimes it just gets so frustrating. But years from now, I would sort of and we don't have to add it because I think it merits itself without saying it. But I just think that down the road, the selectmen shouldn't lose sight of this type of knowledge. And so I thought maybe, you know, we could add a phrase in there that says, you know, it would be great if you could consider parts of this. And then I thought, you know what, it really was about the presentation, finishing it up. And so then I left it out of there. But I just hope that when this makes it to the board, that in 4 or 5 years from now, if something comes up and a part of this can be benefited, that Mr. Richards doesn't necessarily have to come forward and remind us, but that somebody is aware that the work's already been done. So I'm going to rest it on that. I don't want to add that sentence, but that was the only thing, because sometimes, you know, you send something forward and then it just falls into a big black hole, and I feel bad about that, because some people do a good amount of work and offer some knowledge. And so this is, you know, I like the way you did it, the way it is.
Agreed.
No further discussion? All in favor?
Hi.
Hey.
There's a quick procedural question to the chair. I could put this letter on letterhead. I have
Yeah, that's why I gave it as a Word document, so it was easy.
And
You can send a PDF.
yeah, I was like, could you want? I mean, it's the way it's listed here to be the chair to sign the letter. I could send you the copy and
Okay.
you could send me a signed version back,
Okay.
or I'm not gonna do a fake signature, but I'll let you sign it.
Okay.
But are we comfortable with that?
Yeah.
And then I can forward it to the select board. So I believe they're meeting on Tuesday for, I think it's
Because it's
budget,
Monday a
but
holiday?
Monday's a holiday, yeah. But so, I mean, it wouldn't be for this upcoming meeting, so it'd be in their packets likely for the following. And
Okay.
I think we had said by the end of February was one of the, that was the directives, if you will. So, okay, so I'll do that and I'll circle with you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. And thank you to Mike for doing that.
Sure.
Yeah, that was great.
Next on the
And he
agenda.
whipped it off right off the bat, so if you ever need a letter written at the last minute.
I spent my entire career is doing everything at the last minute. Just in time.
And then we'll get an update from the Director of Economic Development.
So I guess that's me. Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of quick things I alluded to in my memo. I talked about a couple of grants. So two of them. The one I want to talk about first is the permitting guide. I meant to bring a copy. I think I might have showed you at a previous meeting. But we had talked to CMRPC to get technical assistance to come up with a permitting guide. That would be, would outline the processes we have for dealing with all the different boards that we have. I'm pointing down the hall, in conservation, health, planning, zoning, etc. So we want to have, sort of all that compiled into one process, because a lot of times they interweave with each other. And we have those processes, but, let's put it on paper and then maybe see if there are opportunities we can make it easier for both ourselves and for the applicants. That said, as part of the process, CMRPC wants to talk to the planning board and to this committee. I know we don't have a meeting scheduled as of yet, but if we were to schedule a March or April meeting, I would suggest we invite them to come and give a quick presentation and a quick, whatever you want to call it, pitch about the project. Because again, we want to make sure we're addressing the things, and sometimes if we're only dealing with the internal staff, we're looking at it a certain way, and have other sets of eyes on it.
If they do come forward to plan something with us, can they try to give us, not their presentation, but some bullet points in advance of what we can expect they're going to cover?
Yeah, to the chat.
Because it might provoke us to be able to, or prompt us to think of some questions to ask and be more prepared.
That's what I was just going to ask, is their presentation them kind of showing what they've done in other communities? Or
I think we can tailor it. I don't know,
Right.
but to everyone's point, I would make sure that whatever they're going to present, there'll be something you have ahead of time. So
Right.
the first time you're seeing it isn't at that night, and then you don't have time to react or
Right. Or I guess, is there a perspective the town wants us to look at it from? Or is there like a grand idea that the town is hoping to get out of this?
That's a good question, and I can give you some more guidance when we get closer to that
Yeah.
point. I think the idea is my quick gut impression from what this group could contribute is that again, you're not involved directly in the permitting that goes on inside the building here, but we want to make it so that someone who is looking to do a business here, and I think collectively your experiences could help inform that as far as like, wait, what about this? Or wait, that's not clear. Or wait, I want a graphic here instead of words. Or I don't know. So I think it would be my hunch is that would be along those lines, but I can gain some clarity and give you some, again, make sure you're briefed ahead of time.
Would it merit the DGC being with us, just in case there's,
The bulk of the work will be with staff.
okay.
So we won't need to convene a separate meeting of that. That'll be happening. They'll be meeting with staff individually and collectively, and then they're going to compile all that and then circulate drafts. So they may come here and visit us for 15 minutes for one meeting, but then we'll also have a chance to review the product and give feedback as well, which would be probably more like in the summer range, shall we say.
Great.
So pending what we talk about, perhaps scheduling a next meeting, I'd like to include that. So anyway, second quick update, I talked about the grant through the Urban Land Institute that would be looking at a corridor of Route 12, including the mall, including the Yankee Drummer site or the Langway site or whatever site you want to refer to it as. But so they, I don't want to overspeak because I haven't got the official words yet, but they really liked our proposal, but they wanted us to scale it down. And so I had a meeting with them where we went through, we talked about how we could scale it down. I then gave them the scaled down version. So I'm going to assume because they made us do that work, they're going to be, we're going to proceed. I don't think they would do that and say, oh, no, sorry, we decided now. We don't. But I don't want to make any assumptions. But so the redefined scope of the project would focus more on the Auburn Mall portion of the corridor and how it connects with the Drury Square area. So how can how can we integrate, we have a big mall building with internally oriented businesses plus some vacant developable areas of the mall. We have municipal uses, with the fire station, the park, the library, et cetera, over there. And then we have Drury Square, where we have, if you look at our little map over there, the green shape.
Yeah, we've got a
over there.
bank and a tennis court and a basketball court and a bank.
Or a
Three banks on one lot.
a bakery. But that said, that is sort of where what we quote unquote have for small business in many places is clustered in that area.
Yeah.
So, we've done these rezoning, you've seen the banners up, we've redesigned the park. So we've done some good things over there, but how can we leverage that? How can we integrate the large mall property with that? And how can we enhance that whole corridor?
Yeah.
So, I'm based on the conversation, I'm optimistic we're going to be able to pursue that.
When you say the corridor, do you mean Auburn Street or do you mean?
Well, in this case, the corridor, I guess, would mean, but when I was saying the corridor before, I meant the Route 12 corridor. But Drury Square obviously encompasses
To both streets.
crossroads, and
Right.
we would to stop that route. So I think I would want to cover in a way I defined it was we would address this village district, which is the light green area on the map. So it would basically go to, from highway to highway on, if that makes sense, from
Yeah,
Youngshin.
from 20
Youngshin down to
Youngshin
DPW, yeah.
to 290.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would love to have included further up Auburn Street, but they already wanted us to limit the corridor, and so that was the way to do it.
Is the plan, once the new fire station is constructed, is the plan to keep the one still in?
Yes,
Drury
yes.
Street?
Yeah, my understanding that's going to maintain as a fire station, but just the administrative functions would go to Prospect Street.
Okay.
And is this kind of exploring different ideas for the purpose of the mall, or like operating the mall continuing as is?
Well, I think it's both. We don't know yet who the consultant team would be because it's kind of they do it on a rolling basis, kind of who's available. But they have like a cluster of consultants and professionals that they use. In particular, one of the things I noted in our application, because what we need assistance on, so to speak, would be what would be or could be some financial type incentives that we could offer. That was one of them. What have they seen in other places to stimulate development? What kind of, we have a TIF program on the books here in Auburn, but it's been used sparingly from what I can see. There are other programs we can do, other grants we can do. So that's one of the aspects. The other aspects would be kind of more of a design. Because again, we have sort of fine-grained, small lot, Drury Square, some municipal uses, and 60 acres of a mall with giant parking. So, how can we do that? And again, I didn't even mention it, but of course we got the high school across the street. We got the other Kelly Square Plaza across the street, and then sort of that other neck of the other side, call it the other side, it'll be the westerly side of Route 12. So, let's kind of how can we weave that together better? So it'd be design, finance, and then again, hopefully some other insights as well. But those are the things that personally I need help with, and that we don't have that kind of expertise in house. So that's what I hope we can get out of it. But
Great.
hopefully we get something official in the not too distant future. Speaking of the mall, and this is not, I didn't note it in my packet, but it was in my folders and I forgot to mention it last time. So CMRPC, we talked about earlier, did a technical assistance project last year working with former planner Adam Menard. I'm going to circulate these. This is more for reference tonight because, again, we don't want to put anyone on the spot and have to react in the moment. This project is complete, so it's not like we can give feedback at this point anyway. But it's CMRPC did kind of a review of kind of the history of the mall a little bit, if you could, and looked at other malls across the state and the region and what some of their attributes have been. So that was the first part of this packet. The second part of the packet is perhaps it could be used more as like a marketing piece or something. Again, this is very focused on the mall. But I thought it was just interesting, and it's kind of had some interesting ideas and just pointed out some interesting factors, which actually happen to dovetail with some of the things I was mentioning about this other potential grant that we might get. So I'm giving this to you for your for your reference and edification. But perhaps when we get into, if we hopefully crossing our fingers, we get into the newer project. Again, this group would also be have at least some, I don't say some role in it, but you'd be well in the loop on what was happening with it, and your input might be valuable. So.
It's interesting, if you go further in at 11, it says they have opportunities for pop-up or temporary storefronts.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to get, space for people to want to do small business or do pop-ups, it might be sort of cool if that space became available. That's why I was saying earlier, if there was space in town, even though it's not municipal space, if there was a way to work with the owners to get people to be able to go in and access it at some kind of a, we may be able to find some areas where people can take some temporary locations to get their small businesses up and running.
Yeah,
That could almost become, permanent later.
Yeah, and through the chair, I think that's similar to the idea we spoke of with Mr. Richards, right? I think that, he was proposing a particular municipal building as kind of like an incubator space,
Right.
which, as we learned, we can't really do that here. But if, working with a private storefront or a storefront in the mall, perhaps, maybe there is a way to promote some, local smaller businesses or come up with some kind of deal to, get someone on their feet where they might get their own bricks and mortars of their own. I think that's a reasonable idea. Anyway, and again, I also like, as someone who likes historical photography, this looking at the Auburn Mall site, the rear of the packet, looking at
Drury Square all plowed over.
pre-development, post-development, sort of interesting. So again, sorry there's no action item on that, but I thought it was, I thought this group would be interested in looking at that.
Thank you.
Definitely.
And then the last thing I'll note, and I mentioned it maybe before the meeting, but the town manager and I did interview 2 strong candidates for the town planner position. I believe an offer will be forthcoming. I know we're in the midst of the budget process right now, so I think that's taken up a lot of the town manager's time. But I know it's a priority for us, and I know I think either candidate would be great, but I'm not sure yet, who's going to accept what, so we'll find out. But hopefully, certainly for my workload, that certainly in the next month or so, we have someone coming on board. So, more to come on that. And I think that's all I have under my official updates, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you so much.
Unless there's questions, of course.
Any questions? The minutes of the January 15th, 2026 meeting have been distributed. Are there any corrections?
Yes.
I have a copy here. Does anyone need one?
Well, there are a few typos, but the 2 that are of note, my name is AY, not EY.
Oh, thank you, Lindsay. Did I do it at top 2? Did I
I think.
go on automatic pilot? No, I typed it correctly at the
Yeah,
top.
it was like.
That's an automatic. Thank you. Yep.
And then the second bullet under the discussion proposal for establishment of an edict, only because it's attributed to me, it caught my eye, but there's an unfortunately missing L in the word public that
Oh,
we could just
Where is...
modify that.
Okay, gotcha. You could have just said the L was missing. Yeah?
That's,
Well, yeah. Okay.
Just knowing that on the official record is something that
So then these
I
won't
said.
accept these this evening. I'll retype them and then we'll do it next time. Yeah, I did have some typos when I went through that the computer didn't
Yeah.
get.
Yeah.
And someone else did look at it, but that's for, yeah. Well, I never said I was a typist. But content was sufficient.
That's good.
Yeah.
Part of the reason, I probably won't go into the detail that I did on these, part of the reason why I gave the content under the discussion for the EDIC is because we had made a motion to close and I wanted in the minutes to have feedback on it so that if somebody to go back and look and say, gee, what was the economic development's thoughts on this, they'd be in the minutes. But when we're not really voting on stuff, I probably won't go to this level of detail.
That's fine.
I think that's fair.
That's great.
Patrick, do you want me to just go ahead and make those?
Sure, if you
and
want,
then-
I'll make them at home, but then
Okay.
you'll make those
Yeah,
changes.
just give it to the clerk's office.
Okay,
Your permission. Okay.
sure.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Well, I would say make I wrote them, so.
Motion to approve, recognizing that the changes will be made. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Okay, and next on the agenda, new business. Is there any new business any members would like to discuss?
We don't have another meeting scheduled for, I know it's probably after if there's anything more, but we don't have another meeting scheduled, so.
Right, we have that I put on the agenda, schedule next meeting.
Oh, okay.
If that's what the committee desires.
Yes, so would we all like to look and schedule the next meeting?
Just topically, there might be some updates on some of the things I mentioned earlier, but I think there'd be probably a bit more on the tax classification, just so we can get closer to a point where we can do a similar letter or memo to the select board. Does that seem to make sense to people?
I would propose we just continue with the second Thursday of the month, if that is working. Seems like it's working for folks. Same time, 6 p.m. Just keep it simple. So that would be March 12th, Thursday at 6 for the next meeting.
Yeah.
Right, that works for me as well. Okay.
We'll call it March 12th at 6 in this room. Okay.
So if there's no further business before the committee, I'll adjourn the meeting.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excellent.